Morning all. Well, enjoying Craig Cadera's book this morning. One thing I recommend though, I heard from Craig, apparently the website I mentioned isn't quite up and running yet. So if you want to get a copy of his book, he recommends Amazon, although somebody told me they found a good deal on eBay. So all the usual suspects. Yeah, this isn't going to get old anytime soon. So I had my little chat, which turned into a really long chat with Mike Mashat yesterday, which I posted. My computer gave me actually the software started acting up again, and so I had to limit my editing on it. I was going to put more images up, but it kept locking up, so I finally just went with what I had. But one thing that and we went so long that the Zoom timed out. Yeah, that's why there's a cut in the middle of it. And started timeout a second time. I was about to get to something they didn't mention, which we'll do another one at some point, and we'll talk about it then. And that is Box Art Den. If you guys haven't been there, you probably would have a good time there. It's some very dedicated people that reconstitute old box art, and I use their images sometimes in my videos. So I got permission from them, and the folks there, I tell you, between them and Scale Mates, you got two really great model history resources there. And but Box Art Den, they I don't know how they do it. They get these old box art images and make them look brand spanking new. The attention to detail is insane. I'm glad to know there are people out there doing things like that, because this is what keeps our history from slipping away from us. Okay. You know, when you're a kid, you shake the box and listen to the rattle. And then you open the box and the smell of styrene. As Mike Mashat likes to say, if you get a vintage kit, you open up a 1950s air comes out, which the cello wrap is actually pretty true. I can smell the leaded gasoline and the tar and nicotine from the smoking line workers. That takes you back to when people could smoke on airplanes. I don't care if you're in the smoking section or not. Normally the smoking section, when I'd ride on TW Eastern, was, I think it was in the back of the plane, if memory serves me right. The idea being that the air moves backwards, but you could be in row 1. If a guy in row 20 fires up, you're going to smell it. You're in a pressurized metal tube, no one's escaping. And people had a fit when they said, yeah, there's no smoking section. We're going to ban smoking on airplanes, and they had to put smoke detectors in lavatories and everything. But, you know, when I look back on it now, I'm like, my God, we were lighting up inside a pressurized metal tube and everybody was sucking in the nicotine. Jesus, I'm surprised they ever allowed it. But then again, everybody used to smoke. One of my dad's friends had told me that around the late 60s, cars started being made without the little quarter windows. In fact, you model car buffs will know this. What's the first Camaro not to have a quarter window? A little angular quarter window at the front. And if memory serves me right, it was the 69 Camaro was the first year that it was just one solid piece of glass. Now, I don't know if this is related, but somebody told me that one of the reasons those little quarter windows were in most cars was, of course, most cars didn't have air conditioners. But he said, yeah, but also everybody smoked back then. It was a place you'd flick your ashes as you were going down the highway. You'd puff and then just stick it in a quarter window, go thump, and the ashes went away. Also, I think the quarter window, was also called the vent window. But anyway, when I got rid of that on cars, it made the later models a little easier to detail, because that was one little less piece of chrome, tiny chrome you had to detail. But that's also about the time that they were country got on its big no smoking kick. See, I'm old enough to remember, I imagine if you're watching this channel, a lot of us are old enough to remember smoking ads on television. Okay, here's a couple of commercials, remember? See if you remember this slogan. In fact, see if you can finish, if you can finish this. You can take Salem out of the country, but you can't take the country out of Salem. That's good advertising that a half a century later I can still remember that. And of course, everybody's favorite, they use the theme from the Magnificent Seven for Marlboro. Bum, bum, ba, bum, bum, ba, 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 bum. And if memory serves me right, one of the early Marlboro men on television was a very young Tom Selleck, later to be Magnum Pi. Which, speaking of cars and Magnum Pi, did any of you guys ever build that Magnum Pi Ferrari model? I almost got that, but never did. And I later worked for a guy that had a red, was it 308? And man, that car sits low to the ground. You can't hardly get out of a driveway without scraping it up. But man, I bet that kit's worth a little something now. And well, somebody's out enjoying a little Sunday flying. It's funny, am I the only one that thinks that general aviation is underrepresented in kit models? Aurora made about 8 of them, Monogram made 2. They did the one, and the kind of weird scales, like a 1 to 135 Piper Apache and a 1 to 181 scale Cessna 180, which were always 2 of my favorite kits. I've built both of them multiple times. And to give you a sign of the times, so just remember, the Tri-Pacer used to come with a couple of figures, and they were hunters. And one of them had a rifle, a Winchester, lever action, and they came with a little dead panther, cougar, that was laid at the feet of one of them. I was like, can you imagine the animal rights people if you put that out today? Mommy, they killed the kitty cat. And of course, my brother and I just built it. I'm like, oh, good thing they killed that panther before it jumped on him and ate him. Well, then again, I remember some 15, 20 years ago, some poor lady out in California was jogging. She got attacked by a panther and was killed. So, they are predatory cats and apex predators. Honey's sitting here looking at me like, I'm still plotting against you. No, don't pretend. Anyway, but back to GA aviation models. Not including the vacuform kits, which the only kit of a Luskin, which is the airplane I learned to fly in, the vacuform kit's the only kit of the airplane I ever found. And I had thought about, well, if I was going to go in the model business, I'm not going to go making Mustangs and Zeros and competing with Hasegawa, Tamiya, Monogram, and everybody else, but I'd make something that simply isn't made and look for a niche market. And I thought a line of general aviation aircraft, the Luskins, Piper Cubs. Well, actually, Cubs are made, so I might make a version of the Cub, because there's several versions of the Cub. When you say Piper Cub, most people think of J3 Cub, but there are the Cub series of J5s and a lot of others. And actually, my personal favorite, and I've flown Cubs. I've flown a couple of different versions of the Cub, particularly the J3, and it is a hoot to fly. By the way, the J3 Cub, the Piper Cub, is the one you fly from the solo from the back seat, which is about the only seat I can get in because that front seat's made for, a 12-year-old girl. But the Cub Cruiser, the P-12, is got the 2-person back seat, and which makes the whole cockpit much bigger. It makes it much easier to get in front, and you solo it from the front seat. And a lot of people had those. And if somebody said you can have a light general aviation airplane, that would be on my top 5 list. That, a Luskin. I may have mentioned the other day, Mike Machette asked me, what's your favorite airplane? And that made my head short circuit. Because if you're not going to say, a specific category, but I finally came to a conclusion, but this is only the airplanes I have flown. I mean, I love the F-15E Strike Eagle, but I've never flown one. I don't think the Air Force would let me look at one. But of the planes I've flown, I finally figured out, and it really wasn't that hard a decision once I had gone through the list. It's the Beechcraft T-34 Mentor. I got to fly one out from the old Jacksonville Navy Flying Club. If you ever get the chance to go for a ride in one, do. And a lot of people go, well, it's just a tandem seat Bonanza. And I'm like, yeah. And a Bonanza is one of the nicest flying airplanes ever made. The T-34 offers general aviation Bonanza-like handling. It's got the nicest control harmony. In other words, balance between the two in pressure and feel of the controls. The rudders, the stick, it all feels the same. Just wonderful, smooth feel to it. Tight controls, excellent response, but stable. You can move the airplane quickly, but if you let off the controls, it'll just fly in a straight line. It's just a magnificent airplane. It's Beechcraft quality. Easy to fly, easy to take off, easy to land, excellent visibility. You've got the military cockpit, which has that wonderful military feel to it, that sort of masculine feel to it, very well organized. You can fly with the canopy open. My only one minor gripe, and I'm sure it exists for a reason, I was flying in the back seat and still had pretty good visibility. It was a little blind over the nose and the flare, but I mean, you can see left and right well enough, not a problem. But we flew down the beach at about 110 knots with the canopy open, our elbows hanging out. My God, that was so much fun. Now, yeah, that plexiglass bubble in Florida, you're going to want to fly with the canopy open. But the only problem was in the back of the plane. This isn't like, oh my God, it's a problem. It was just a minor thing. Was that being in the back of the plane, the canopies open and close together. And I don't think you could operate them independently, at least not on the one I was in. But anyway, when you slide it open, if you're in the back seat, that teardrop canopy cups some of the air, blows a lot of air on the back of your head, kind of pushing forward on you. But again, and I wasn't wearing any kind of headgear. Not a big deal. God, that airplane was fun. That's why one in good condition runs about $250,000. It's not because it's really worth $250,000. It's because there's not that many of them in civilian hands, and they can get $250,000 for it, and you can get your parts from Beechcraft. So there's plenty of part support. It's mostly Bonanza parts. But yeah, the T-34. Now, if I'd ever flown a Mustang or an F-105 Thunder Chief or something, I might. Now, here's your question for the day. What is your sexiest looking car, your sexiest looking airplane, and your sexiest looking armored fighting vehicle? And when it comes to looks, man, now I can't even make my mind up. When it comes to sexiest looking armored fighting vehicle, there's so many tanks today that look the same. I'm inclined to go with the Israeli Merkava because of that kind of wedge look it has. But I always really like that proportional look of the Walker Bulldog. And I know it's just when you look at it, everything looks right. And there's something about that long bustle on the back of the turret when it swings around. It gives it this long, sleek look. So, you know what? I think I'm going to go with the Bulldog just because of its balanced look. Aircraft, I'm torn between the Spitfire and the F-106, but I love Convair products. So I'm going to go with the F-106, the Sexy Six. I mean, they even called it the Sexy Six. And sexiest car, I'm torn between a couple of my favorites, the mid-60s GTOs and the 67 Impalas. But when it just comes to sexy, I don't know, so those Italian sports cars, even the Fords. But, growing up watching Magnum, you have a soft spot. But I think I'm going to go with the mid-60s GTO. That's one reason I didn't bat an eye at dropping $50 on a couple or $40 on a couple of kits, which, by the way, one of those kits, I forget which one, cost a lot more than the other because one of them was like $19, the other was like $28. But that's because one of them had a lot of extra parts, which makes me wonder, they're not really paying for the extra plastic so much as they're probably paying for the time it took to cut the extra molds. But one of them, I think you can make it a convertible or a hardtop. I'll get into that when I do the builds on them. But I've been out this shed in 2 days. Hopefully they'll get out today. In fact, speaking of which, I should probably go crank the air conditioner up in there right now while we got some good weather. And other than that, folks, thanks for enjoying your morning coffee with me, and we'll see you guys later.